It's year number 3 of Joey McGuire out in the 806. And in today's video, we'll talk about expectations for the Red Raiders in 2024, including my official record prediction for Texas Tech. Will they take a sizable leap or will it be gradual? We'll discuss that and much more in today's video. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And I want to hear from you before we get into anything about today's video. What is your official record prediction for the Red Raiders? And simply put, how many games do you have the Red Raiders winning in 2024? Let me know down on the pinned comment below. You've got a stacked offense. You think your offensive line is going to be a whole lot better, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. The schedule? Yeah, it's pretty favorable, but I want to hear from you guys before I even talk about the schedule whatsoever. Let me know how many games you have the Red Raiders winning in 2024 down on the pinned comment below. All right. Let's jump into this because this is a year where, to simply, put it simple, right? I think a lot of people have high expectations for the Red Raiders. You think about Behren Morton being 100% healthy going into, his first year as the clear-cut starter for the Red Raiders. They went out and they added guys not only at the wide receiver spot, but at the tight end position. You got better, at least presumably, at the offensive line. And oh, by the way, you bring back one of the greatest running backs in program history in Taj Brooks. That's just on the offensive side. On the defensive side, you bring back arguably the best linebacking duo in the Big 12 in Ben Roberts and Jacob Rodriguez. Your secondary is littered with high-profile recruits, including Mo Horn. You've got guys back there that have proven it in the Big 12 in C.J. Baskerville. You've also got Braylon Lux in the secondary. On the defensive line, you are as deep in terms of the depth chart that you may have been in the past decade for the Red Raiders. Now, to be fair to that defensive line, there's not a lot of proven guys, but there is a lot of depth. There's a reason why there's a ton of buzz about the Red Raiders as it stands right now. And let's just jump right into this because I think when you look at Texas Tech, right, there's going to be a lot to discuss here. And let's go right to the schedule. Looking last game, you did pretty well in the Independence Bowl, right? You win that game, you build some confidence. That's the first time Behren Morton really looked like Behren Morton in a while. Let's go game by game here, though. Abilene Christian, win. That one's pretty easy, right? I think if you don't win that game, a lot of questions are going to come out, but I do think Texas Tech is clearly the better team right now. They are 32.5-point favorites, according to DraftKings. I think that's an easy W for the Red Raiders. Now, your first true test of the season, if you are Texas Tech, you head out to Pullman, a place where I think the Cougars are going to have a lot of really just want and desire to prove to a Power 4 team, hey, we deserve to be in a major conference. We shouldn't have been left out. That being said, I think Texas Tech is clearly better than Washington State, a team that lost a ton of production, not only on the offensive side, but the defensive side. I think the Red Raiders win that game on the road and start feeling good about themselves going home for a 3 consecutive home stretch for the Red Raiders. North Texas comes in. I think the Red Raiders win that one. You go into conference play 3-0. At worst, you should be 2-1, but I think you'll be 3-0. Then you face 2 of the bottom feeders, at least projected to be bottom feeders, in the Big 12, in Arizona State, in Cincinnati. Now, I think Texas Tech is a completely different team when they are at home. I'm going to give them a W not only against Arizona State, but against Cincinnati as well. Now, before we get into the crux of the schedule here, again, I have Texas Tech starting out 5-0. That's perfect. And you know what's perfect as well? This right here. You like that segue. I know you do. You haven't seen me in a second, but you love that segue. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and use the code BACK212 to get your new favorite Texas Tech long sleeve t-shirt, regular t-shirt, hoodie, socks, hat, anything in between. And the best part about it, when you use the promo code BACK212, you save 15%. There's no better apparel company out there when it comes to Texas Tech. I have this stuff on the way to me as we speak. I am uber excited about it. You should go get your new favorite Texas Tech shirt over on homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code BACK212 to save 15% when you do. All right, let's get back to the schedule here. And This is where it really starts, right? This is where I think the schedule really turns on its head for Texas Tech in terms of difficulty. Okay. Washington State, in my opinion, is arguably your biggest test through week 5, right? Maybe Cincinnati could be argued there. But then you go out to Tucson and face off against a top 20 team, at least in the preseason, in the Arizona Wildcats. Texas Tech has struggled on the road in the past. I know I gave them a win at Washington State, but I think Arizona is really, really good. And I think they're going to prove a lot of people wrong with their coach leaving for Washington. They get a guy from San Jose State and Brett Brennan, who I have the utmost respect for in the sense of how good of a coach he is. And not to mention, they've got Fafita and McMillan on the offense in terms of a quarterback and wide receiver combo. This is where I think Texas Tech enters the loss column for the first time in 2024. Now you got Baylor coming in. You've got the stretch of Baylor and TCU. You go to Fort Worth, but there's been, let's just say, a lot of animosity. I think that's probably the best way to say it, right? I mean, we'll get back to that here in a second in terms of the Baylor outcome, but this 2-game stretch, I think, for Texas Tech between Baylor and TCU could not only do a lot for them on the, gridiron, right? If you win these 2 games, you feel pretty damn good about yourself, but also the recruiting front, because you got Baylor and Texas Tech and that rivalry in the sense of the recruiting trail and those respective, I call them front offices. Texas Tech is really the only one with the front office. Baylor has more of a recruiting staff and everything, but Texas Tech has the GM and more NFL model. You've got that, and then obviously we know the animosity between TCU and Texas Tech and the athletic departments in terms of TCU not selling tickets to Texas Tech and yada, yada, yada. There's a lot there, right? So these 2 games are super interesting to me. Back to the schedule at hand. All right, you're 5-1 at this point. I don't think you lose at home to Baylor. I think you are a clear-cut better team than Baylor in all 3 facets of the game. Some people will say that's crazy. I think on offense, it's clear cut. Even if your offensive line just gets marginally better, I think Behren Morton is really good. Now you've got Finn over at Baylor, the transfer from Toledo, actually Vinny Scurry's teammate up there. And I think Finn is really good too as the quarterback for Baylor. But that's a drastic jump coming from the MAC to the Big 12. I think Texas Tech is better in all 3 facets. As I mentioned, they move on to be 6-1. You head to Fort Worth, which is basically just Lubbock East, right? You think I'm going to give them a win here. Unfortunately, I'm not. I think this is probably the Texas Tech quote-unquote slip-up game in terms of, I think Texas Tech and TCU are right on the same plane in terms of how good of teams they are. I think Texas Tech and TCU, really what it comes down to for them, which quarterback stays healthy, right? That's really what it comes down to. So in coin flip games in college football, I typically give that to the home team. And I know there's going to be somebody in the comments saying, RC, Texas Tech is the home team in Fort Worth. Yeah, well, not technically. I'm going to give the Horned Frogs that victory right there. You move on to a place in Ames, Iowa, where historically you've struggled, right? You have that game a couple of years ago where you won 14-10 in frigid conditions with Tyler Shuck coming in there and Baylor Cupp doing absolutely sensational things. I think Iowa State is a very good team, and it would not shock me at all if they are playing in Arlington. Becht is one of those guys where I think he could take a serious jump this year in the Big 12. I'm going to hand that L to Texas Tech there. They are now 6-3. You head home to face Dion, and you finish your schedule with 2 of 3 at home. I think Texas Tech is clearly better than Colorado. Does Colorado have the 2 best players in the matchup? Yes, in Shedeur and Travis. Those are the 2 best players on the field. But overall team, Texas Tech is leaps and bounds better, in my opinion. I'm going to give Texas Tech that win on November 9th. And by the way, if you're going to that game, let me know in the comments. I will be there as well. We might just have a back to 12 Scarlet and Black Insider get together, have some beers, some cervezas, whatever you call them, there out in the 806. Now, when it comes to Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, I think Oklahoma State has a legitimate possibility as well to play in Arlington. And I think Texas Tech does as well if a couple of bounces go their way, specifically that TCU game. But historically, Texas Tech hasn't done too well at Oklahoma State and just on the road in general. I'm going to give Texas Tech the loss there to the Cowboys on that one. So you go into your last game of the year at 7-4. And I know there's some people already typing in the comments right now, this is a down year for Texas Tech. This is a terrible year for Texas Tech. Listen, I have them going 8-4. That's a good year. Sometimes progression, people want it just quick and in a hurry, right? 8-4 would be great for Texas Tech, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. You're steadying that progression going up. If you're Coach McGuire and crew, you're keeping that momentum, right? And most importantly, I think there's room for upside there. Once Texas Tech wins a couple of road games, let's play the hypothetical here because obviously this whole video is hypothetical, right? If Texas Tech goes out and let's say they win their first two road games in Pullman and Tucson, I think the narrative just completely flips on its head for Texas Tech in terms of how you perceive them on the road. And I think that TCU game can change. And if those games in Tucson and Fort Worth change, you're talking about a team that's 10-2. I truly believe that that's Texas Tech's upside this year is 10-2. Their floor is 7-5, in my opinion. Now, the most important aspect of all of this is Behren Morton, right? Can he stay healthy? And I think he will. And I think Texas Tech goes 8-4. Let me know how many games you have Texas Tech winning down on the pinned comment below. Am I crazy? I think 8-4 is more than fair. Let me know if you agree down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and, well, like the video. If you want to stay in the know on all things Texas Tech football all year long right here on the most subscribed to Texas Tech YouTube channel. Yeah, there's a couple other channels out there that are doing good things as well. They're somewhat big. We're doubling them up, though. This is the most interactive community giving you daily videos on all things Texas Tech all year long, whether it's on the gridiron or the hardwood. We've got you covered right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.